this video, we'll discuss secondary referencing, or citing a source found in another source, using the Chicago referencing style. Very occasionally, when you're doing your research, you may come across a citation or quote that another author has quoted or cited. For example, let's take a look at this excerpt from An Indigenous Peoples' History of the United States by Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz. As I read through this, I see that the governing councils of many Indigenous communities of the time were called a feminist dream, those three words in quote marks. We can see that this quote comes from the book 1491, New Revelations of the Americas Before Columbus by Charles C. Mann. And when we check the references, we can see that this phrase can be found on page 332 of the aforementioned book. I want to use that quote in my assignment, so I would use a secondary citation, where you cite a source that another author has cited. Before we go any further, it's important to have a crucial disclaimer. Generally speaking, the Chicago Manual of Style discourages secondary referencing because ideally, you should examine all sources that you cite. So in the example we saw before, we want to make sure that Dunbar Ortiz didn't misquote Mann or cite them out of context. So you should read both Dunbar Ortiz and Mann. If you do this, then they will receive their own footnote and bibliography entry. So you can see the two footnote examples for each of the two sources right here. But reading the original source might not be possible. The original source might be out of print, not available in the library, not available through interlibrary loan, you can't find a copy online, or you're just not able to read it in time for your assignment. That can happen. If that is the case, then you would quote or paraphrase the second person as you found them in the first source. So let's go back to our previous example. If you want to quote Mann as listed in Dunbar Ortiz, you would cite it like this. So you've got the author and the title. So far, it's looking very similar to a book that you've cited before. And we have the publication information in round brackets. And you have the page number where the quote is located in the book 1491. And then right after that, you have the words quoted in, and then you have the full citation information for An Indigenous Peoples' History of the United States. So you include the author's name first, then the title in italics, publication information, and the page where you found the quote by Mann in An Indigenous Peoples' History of the United States. The quoted in serves as a link between those two sources. It helps readers see where the quote originates from and who you actually consulted. If Dunbar Ortiz had paraphrased Mann in this case, then you would use cited in rather than quoted in. That's the general guidance for footnotes. But what about the bibliography? Well, annoyingly, the Chicago Manual of Style does not give explicit guidance for secondary referencing and how to approach the bibliography, because, again, secondary referencing should be a last resort. Some, including Turabian's A Manual for Writers, will say that you would include a modified version of the secondary citation that you use in the footnotes in the bibliography. So, for example, looking here, we've got a bibliography entry that looks very similar to what we used in the footnotes for Charles Mann and Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz, but you use full stops instead of commas, quoted is capitalized, so on and so forth. So that's one way to demonstrate it in the bibliography. However, others would say that you should only list the source that you read in the bibliography. So in this case, you would only list An Indigenous Peoples' History of the United States in the bibliography because that's the only one that you actually read. That is a standard practice in the Brooks History Department. No matter what, If you list both sources without making it absolutely clear that you only read one, then that can mislead your readers and potentially result in lower marks in your assignment. So that all sounds fine, but what do you actually do with the bibliography entry? Well, we'll make it simple. If you're a Brooks student, unless you are told otherwise, cite both sources in the footnote and only put the source you read in the bibliography. So taking our example again, we've got both sources in the footnotes, Charles Mann's 1491 and Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz in Indigenous Peoples' History of the United States. And then in the bibliography, because we only read Dunbar Ortiz, we will include only that title in the bibliography. You should always be upfront about what you've actually consulted in your research. To learn more about Chicago referencing, watch the other videos in this series or visit the relevant course resource help page for your subject.